It arrived on a Thursday, sealed in that sterile beige envelope that always made my stomach knot. I'd been sorting through invoices at the kitchen counter, the lake glinting peacefully outside my window, when I saw the envelope perched on top of my mail stack like it had every right to be there. I should have known. Nothing good ever comes from the county courthouse in a plain envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. The sound of paper tearing felt too loud in the quiet space I'd built for myself. My eyes scanned the first few lines, not yet absorbing the meaning. But then the words sank in. Ethan Monroe is hereby granted partial access to the property known as Lakeside Cabin, effective immediately. I stopped reading. No. The paper slipped from my fingers and landed on the floor, face up, like it wanted to mock me. My knees gave out just enough to send me stumbling into the stool behind me. I sat down hard, cold disbelief crawling up my spine. That cabin wasn't just wood and stone. It was the sanctuary I'd poured myself into when Ethan walked out on me for Kara 2 years ago. When I couldn't sleep through the night without hearing his lies echo in my mind. When I needed something, anything, that was mine. I had designed every inch of that space. I had scrubbed the soot out of the old fireplace, planted lavender along the porch, built a bookshelf with my bare hands. It was the place where I found myself again, brick by brick, after he shattered everything. And now he had access? The judge's words echoed in my head, cold and clinical. Equitable division of marital assets. Apparently, years of betrayal, infidelity, and public humiliation didn't count for much in court. I reached for my phone, needing to tell someone, needing to scream, needing to buzz. A new message appeared. Ethan, we'll be using the cabin this weekend. Cry if you want. The audacity, the cruelty, the sheer smugness packed into that one sentence made my blood boil. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding in my ears. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in, the air thicker. Was this why he fought so hard in court? Not because he cared about the place, but because he knew what it meant to me, because he wanted to twist the knife one more time? He was never subtle, Ethan. Always calculated. Always smiling when he twisted the truth into something sharp and legal. And Kara, God, Kara, had she pushed him into this? Did she want to play Lady of the Lake now, sipping wine in a space built from my ruin? I stood abruptly, needing motion, needing air. I crossed to the back doors and flung them open. The breeze hit my face like a slap, but it steadied me. The lake shimmered under a pale spring sky, calm and indifferent to my pain. I hated how beautiful it still looked, how serene everything remained while my world tilted on its axis again. For a moment, I imagined driving out there. Beating them to the cabin, chaining the door shut, plastering private property signs everywhere. But no, the order was real. I'd be the one in contempt. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. I'd shed enough for him. I wasn't going to cry because a broken man needed to haunt the space I built to survive him. I bent down, picked up the court letter, and read every line this time. It was clear. Shared use of the cabin. No mention of the land surrounding it. No mention of anything but the structure. My breath caught. A tiny sliver of something, not hope, but not despair either, began to form. Still, it didn't take away the sting. I spent the rest of the day drifting between numbness and fury, between pacing the floor and rereading that damn message. Ethan had done a lot over the years, cheated, lied, gaslit, tried to reduce me to a footnote in his success story, but this felt like a deliberate violation. He was going to walk into my safe space and act like he belonged there? Like he hadn't detonated our life and walked away whistling? I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom that evening, staring at the woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. I didn't recognize the defeated expression on her face, and I hated that he still had the power to pull it from me. No more. I wasn't that version of me anymore. He'd taken enough. Let him have the cabin. Let him bask in the illusion of victory. Because something inside me shifted that night. The pain was real, yes, but underneath it, rising like smoke from a spark, was resolve. The story wasn't over. Not even close. If Ethan thought this was a win, he clearly forgot who I'd become. He may have forced his way into the cabin, but he had no idea what was coming next. I hadn't meant to go out there. I told myself it was just to check on things, maybe make sure he hadn't already stomped through my sanctuary with his muddy boots and cheap cologne. But the truth was simpler. I needed to see it one last time, as it was before his presence infected it. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled up the long drive. Early morning sun dappled through the trees, casting golden patterns across the windshield. The cabin stood quietly ahead, exactly as I left it. Cedar siding warm in the light. My wind chimes tinkled softly on the porch, untouched. I got out of the car and just stood there for a moment. My lungs pulled in the familiar scent of pine and damp earth. For a second, I pretended nothing had changed, that Ethan hadn't wormed his way back into the one place he had no right to. But pretending didn't last long anymore. I stepped onto the porch, brushing my hand along the railing. Every board, every nail, I remembered where I'd placed them. This wasn't just a cabin. It was the aftermath. The recovery. The proof that I could survive even when everything else burned down. My fingers found the key in my pocket, but I didn't unlock the door. I didn't need to go inside. I already knew what it would feel like. Hollow, violated, mine but not mine. I stepped back and looked beyond the cabin, out toward the trees, the fields rolling down toward the water, the slope behind the cabin that led to the fire pit and the garden. All of it mine. The court order gave him access to the cabin. That structure. Not the acres surrounding it. Not the fire pit. Not the docks. Not the wildflower meadow I planted by hand. A rustle behind me snapped me out of my thoughts. Didn't expect to see you here, Marcus said, emerging from the trees with a thermos in one hand and his usual half-smile. Figured you'd be home throwing darts at a picture of Ethan's face. I already did that, I muttered, managing a weak smile. He climbed the porch and handed me the thermos. Black, no sugar. I took it, grateful for the warmth in my hands. You always know. He looked out over the land, silent for a beat. So he really gets access, huh? I nodded. Just the cabin. Not the land. Not the water. Not anything else. Marcus tilted his head, squinting as if measuring the space in front of us. You ever think about what you could do with the rest of it? I laughed, dry and bitter. What, like build a moat and post armed guards? He chuckled, then grew thoughtful. No. I mean, something better. Bigger. Something that makes this place yours again. Loudly. Visibly. The idea snagged on something inside me. Mine again. Loudly. Visibly. I turned back toward the land, and suddenly I wasn't just looking, I was seeing. The wide-open stretch behind the cabin, the natural clearing by the lake, the ring of trees that made everything feel private, safe. It wasn't just peace anymore. It was potential. What if I did? I asked slowly, turning to Marcus. What if I turned this into something? Like what? I don't know. A retreat. A place for women. Women who've been gutted like I was, who've rebuilt or are trying to. Not just yoga and candles, real strength. Leadership. Creativity. A place to remember who the hell we are. Marcus's grin spread. You mean like a phoenix? I blinked. Yeah, like the Phoenix Retreat. The words gave me chills. Not from the cold, but from how right they felt, how immediately I saw the vision take shape. Fire from destruction. Wings from pain. A retreat, built on the land he couldn't touch, growing louder and more vibrant with every passing day. Let him sit inside the cabin with his bitter wife and empty ego while the world outside bloomed with purpose. Let him see what true creation looked like. Suddenly I felt air in my lungs again. Real air. The kind that fills you after drowning. Marcus nudged me. You know I've got friends. Good contractors. Smart people who'd be on board. You say the word, and we get it moving. I looked back at the cabin, his prize. Then back at the land, my kingdom. My jaw clenched with a new kind of certainty. Let's start making calls, I said. This weekend. Let Ethan come. Let him see. This isn't where I fall apart. It's where I rise. The first call I made was to Melissa, an old friend from college who'd gone on to become a renowned architect known for turning scars into structures. We hadn't spoken in a few years, but as soon as I explained my vision, women rising from pain, reclaiming themselves, healing without apology, she didn't hesitate. "I'm in," she said. "I already see it. Glass, wood, fire motifs. You're not just building a retreat, Danielle. You're building a resurrection." And that's exactly what it felt like. The next few days were a flurry of phone calls, sketches, and site visits. I found myself waking up before sunrise, buzzing with energy I hadn't felt in years. The ache in my chest that Ethan's smug message had left behind was still there, but it had become something else, like kindling catching fire. It didn't destroy me. It fueled me. Marcus was there every step of the way. He cleared brush with his own 2 hands, walked the land with Melissa, and acted as my anchor whenever my doubts crept in. And they did, of course. More than once I stood on the porch of the cabin, staring out at the untouched land and thinking, what if this is just a reaction? What if I fail? But then I'd remember the court letter. The way Ethan still believed he had the power to ruin me. The echo of his text, mocking and cold. And just like that, fear turned to focus. We started marking the land with flags. Melissa moved fast, sketching out potential spaces, a main hall with high, open beams like a cathedral of rebirth, smaller cabins for solitude, walking paths that wove through the trees like veins returning to the heart. Every corner was designed to breathe life into the women who would arrive here one day. Women who, like me, needed to be reminded they weren't just survivors. They were forces. I named it the Phoenix Retreat because the image wouldn't leave me. A bird burning down to ashes and then emerging again, stronger and more vibrant than before. It was everything I felt, everything I wanted others to feel too. I didn't want pity. I wanted power. I didn't want revenge. I wanted rebirth. On the 4th day, trucks started arriving. Contractors Melissa knew, many of them women, most of them people who understood pain, divorce, loss, betrayal, and saw this project as more than a job. It became a mission. There was a hum of purpose in the air. Sawdust floated like pollen. Hammers echoed like heartbeat rhythms. I walked the grounds every day, checking progress, offering coffee, laughing more than I expected to. Marcus teased me for being a construction boss lady, and I embraced it. I had spent too long shrinking myself down. Not anymore. One evening, Melissa pulled me aside as we stood where the fire circle would eventually go. The sun had dipped low, casting the lake in gold. "You realize what you're doing, right?" she said, brushing her hair out of her eyes. "This place, it's not just for them. It's for you too." I looked out over the budding retreat. The skeletal frames, the cleared trails, the vision being breathed into wood and soil. She was right. I wasn't just creating something for others. I was healing myself with every nail, every board, every decision I made that Ethan could never touch. I hadn't seen him yet. I knew it was only a matter of time before he arrived at the cabin, expecting me to still be reeling, expecting the Danielle he thought he'd left behind, quiet, polite, broken. But that version of me was long gone. Now I was laying foundation after foundation, both on the land and inside myself. We installed a carved wooden sign at the entrance to the property that week. Melissa and I stood side by side as Marcus and one of the builders bolted it in place. The Phoenix Retreat, it read in graceful black letters, beneath an image of wings rising from flames. I reached out and ran my fingers over the wood. Let him come. Let him see what I've built. Let him know that when he tried to break me, he handed me the match. And I used it to light the sky. I heard the sound of tires on gravel before I saw the car. I didn't need to check. I knew it was them. Ethan had always driven too fast down that winding road, like he thought everything should part for him. And Kara, she probably insisted they take her sleek black SUV so the world would see just how well she was doing. I stood at the edge of the main path with a clipboard in my hand, dressed in denim and boots dusted with earth, my hair tied up out of my face. I didn't shift or hide. Let them look. Let them see. The SUV came into view, kicking up dust behind it, and then it rolled to a halt in front of the cabin. For a moment, no one got out. They just sat there, idling, taking in the scene. A hammer rang out in the distance. A buzzsaw whined. Workers moved across the land, measuring, drilling, shouting friendly directions. What once was quiet wilderness now pulsed with purpose. Finally, Ethan stepped out of the car. His sunglasses reflected the activity, but I didn't miss the way his jaw tightened. He hadn't expected this. That much was clear. Kara followed, adjusting her oversized sunglasses and smoothing her dress like she was stepping out of a magazine shoot. And then Lila, their teenage daughter, climbed out from the back seat slowly. Her expression was harder to read. Curious, maybe? Guarded. She took in the construction, the people, the energy, and then her gaze landed on me. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I waited. Ethan approached first, his voice already sliding into condescension. Well, you've been busy. Just making use of what's mine, I said coolly, resting the clipboard against my hip. He glanced over his shoulder at Kara, who was openly staring at the nearest structure taking shape, what would be the community circle, built beneath open beams that arched toward the sky. Her confusion was plain. She looked at me like I was speaking a language she'd never learned. And what exactly is all this? Ethan asked. A retreat, I said simply. The Phoenix Retreat. Kara laughed, a sharp little bark that didn't fit the setting. You're kidding. I didn't flinch. Not at all. It's a place for women to rebuild. To remember who they are. To rise. Ethan took off his sunglasses then, as if he needed to look me in the eye to confirm I was serious. You're building all of this, around the cabin? Yes. The cabin you have access to, per the court order. And only the cabin. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Kara stepped forward, folding her arms. You can't seriously expect us to be okay with this. You've got people crawling all over the place. It's private property, I said. My private property. The cabin was part of the marital assets. The rest of the land never was. It's mine, and I can do what I like with it. Ethan opened his mouth, but Lila cut in. It's kind of amazing, she said, her eyes scanning the construction again. What's that over there? I followed her gaze. That's going to be the reflection garden. A space for quiet. We're planting memory trees and building benches from reclaimed wood. She nodded slowly, then looked at me with something like admiration. It's beautiful. Kara looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Lila, get your bag. We're going into the cabin. Lila hesitated. Can I stay out here for a bit? I just want to see. Now, Kara snapped. Ethan watched the exchange, but said nothing. He looked back at me. This is war, you know. No, I said. This is evolution. You wanted the cabin, and you got it. Now you get to sit inside it and watch what you'll never be part of. I turned before he could respond, walking away without a glance back. Workers greeted me as I passed, their energy undisturbed by the intruders. Marcus was waiting by the future fire circle with blueprints in hand. They don't look too happy, he murmured, watching them retreat toward the cabin. They expected rubble, I said. They found a revolution. He laughed and handed me the plans. Come on, boss. Let's build something they'll never forget. And I did. Because they thought they'd come to see a woman undone. Instead, they saw the beginning of something unstoppable. It was close to dusk when I found Lila again. I hadn't gone looking for her, not exactly, but something pulled my eyes toward the tree near the garden plot. She sat alone on a half-finished bench, her phone forgotten beside her, legs crossed awkwardly in oversized jeans. The sunset lit her face in streaks of gold and shadow, and for a moment, she looked far older than her 15 years. I approached slowly, my boots crunching on gravel. She didn't flinch. They think I'm in the cabin, she said, not turning to look at me. You're not. She shrugged. It's boring in there. Kara's yelling about Wi-Fi and Dad's pretending to care. This is cooler. I sat on the far end of the bench, leaving space between us. I didn't know what this was yet. A peace offering? A quiet rebellion? Either way, I didn't want to scare it off. You've done a lot, Lila said after a minute. Since before. Before. That was one way to put it. I had to, I said. Standing still wasn't an option. She nodded slowly. Most people would have just left it. Sold the place. Walked away. I thought about it, I admitted. But then I realized, why should I be the one to lose something I built? Lila was quiet. The sounds of construction had faded for the day, replaced by the chirp of insects and the rustle of trees in the evening wind. The retreat always felt most alive at this hour, like it was breathing with me. Can I ask you something? She said, voice softer now. Did you hate him? My dad, I mean. After? I looked at her, really looked at her. She had Ethan's eyes, but they were softer somehow. Less guarded. I did. For a long time. And then I didn't. Why? Because hating him was just another way to let him take up space in my life. And I wanted that space back. She nodded again. Makes sense. We sat in silence for a while. Then, almost shyly, she reached down and picked up her phone, pulling up a photo. I sketched something. It's not finished, but it's kind of how I pictured that garden you talked about. With the memory trees. She handed it to me, and I was stunned. It was rough, sure, pencil lines and shading without detail, but the structure was there. Curved paths, tiered flower beds, benches beneath hanging lanterns. It was thoughtful, balanced, beautiful. This is incredible, I said, handing it back carefully. Her cheeks flushed pink. I like designing stuff. I used to help my mom with staging open houses. But Kara says it's a waste of time. Of course she does, I muttered before I could stop myself. Lila cracked a smile. Yeah, she's not exactly full of warm encouragement. She's not your mom, I said gently, and she doesn't get to decide what's worth doing. Her smile faltered, but she didn't look away. Dad drags me on these trips when they're fighting. Says it's family time, but it just feels like punishment. I think they only bring me because it makes them look good. I swallowed down the familiar bitterness. Ethan never cared who got hurt, only how it all looked from the outside. You're always welcome here, I said quietly. The land's mine. I decide who gets to stay. Lila's eyes flicked to mine. There was something searching in her gaze, like she wanted to believe me but had been let down one too many times. You'd really let me help with this, she asked, motioning toward the garden. I'd love it if you helped. You've clearly got a good eye. And this retreat isn't just about healing, it's about creating something powerful. You can be part of that. Her lips parted in surprise. Nobody's ever said that to me. My heart ached for her. She was just a kid trying to be seen. Well, I said, consider it said. We watched the sun sink lower behind the trees, the last light pooling in the spaces between the trunks. Lila leaned back, shoulders relaxing for the first time since I'd seen her. I wish my dad had let you stay, she said quietly. I turned to her. He didn't let me go. I walked away. She smiled, then really smiled, and it lit her whole face. I wasn't expecting an ally to show up in Ethan's car. But maybe life had its own way of restoring balance. One girl with a sketchpad and curiosity might not have seemed like much. But to me, she was the first spark of something new. And I wasn't going to let it go out. It didn't take long. Just after sunrise the next morning, I heard the slam of a car door and the rhythmic stomp of Ethan's boots coming up the gravel path like a war drum. I didn't flinch. I'd been expecting him. Part of me had even hoped for it. He stormed toward the open worksite, jaw tight, shoulders squared, Kara trailing behind like a storm cloud in heels. I was standing with Marcus near the future welcome hall. Blueprints rolled under my arm when Ethan reached us. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded, eyes blazing. Marcus calmly took a step back. I'll give you 2 minutes, he said, though I could feel his presence lingering like a protective force behind me. I turned to Ethan. "Good morning to you too." He shoved a hand through his hair, clearly working to hold himself together. "You built a damn fortress around the cabin. It looks like a resort exploded out here." "No explosions," I said evenly. "Just careful planning. And construction. All of which is legal." "You're building a business," Kara cut in, her voice shrill. "Right next to a shared asset. That has to be some kind of violation." I pulled a folder from my canvas bag and handed it to Ethan. "That's the property survey. And the updated deed records. The court granted you shared access to the cabin itself, not the surrounding acreage. Every inch of this land belongs to me." Ethan yanked open the folder, flipping through the documents. I watched his expression shift from outrage to confusion to something I hadn't seen on him in years: fear. Kara peeked over his shoulder, her lips tightening with every page. "This can't be right," she said. "We'll sue. We'll drag this into court. You'll get shut down for zoning violations or harassment or—" "No, you won't," I interrupted. "Because I've already been through the zoning board. The land is cleared for mixed-use development. I submitted plans for a retreat facility, and they approved it. Every permit is in that folder. Every inch is airtight." Ethan looked up, and I could see it in his eyes, the moment he realized the trap he'd walked into. He hadn't expected me to fight, let alone plan. He thought I'd sob quietly and make room. He thought the cabin would be a victory lap, not a front-row seat to everything he no longer controlled. "You're doing this just to get back at me," he spat. I let out a low laugh. "You flatter yourself. This isn't about you. It never was. But you're intentionally making it uncomfortable," Kara snapped. "We have to walk through a construction zone to get to the door. There are workers everywhere. No privacy. No peace." "Then don't come," I said simply. "Your access is your right. Exercising it is your choice." Ethan stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You're using Lila. Don't think I haven't noticed." That stung. I felt my spine straighten. "I'm not using her," I said, steel threading through my voice. "She came to me. She's curious, she's creative, and she's craving something authentic. I offered her a space to be heard. Something you and Kara clearly haven't done." His nostrils flared, but he had no comeback. He knew I was right. Behind him, Kara folded her arms. "This isn't over." "No," I said. "It's just beginning." They turned and walked back toward the cabin, stung but defeated. I watched them go, my heart racing but my hands steady. Ethan might have expected a doormat, but he got a firewall instead. One he couldn't tear down with charm or threats. Marcus reappeared from the shadows, arms crossed, a small smirk on his face. "You know, if I ever go to war, I'm bringing you." I let out the breath I'd been holding and laughed. "Thanks. I'll add General to my resume." We returned to the plans, but the shift in energy was unmistakable. The retreat wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a statement. A line in the dirt, etched with blueprints and purpose. Later that afternoon, Lila found me again, eyes wide. "What happened earlier?" "Your dad confronted me about the retreat," I said gently. "Tried to scare me. Did it work?" "Not even a little." She grinned. "Good." I crouched beside her and unfolded one of the newer plans. "I want you to help me redesign the corner by the lake. It needs softer lines. Think you're up for it?" Her whole face lit up. "Absolutely." The confrontation hadn't broken me. It revealed something stronger, my foundation. And it wasn't built on bitterness or revenge. It was built on truth. And Ethan? He was standing in a structure he could enter, but never own again. The morning light spilled across the retreat like a promise. I stood at the edge of the newly completed walking path, watching women move between the still unfinished cabins and the open-air studio where yoga mats were being unrolled. It was happening. Not just the construction, not just the blueprints becoming real, but the vision, the purpose, the soul of it all. The Phoenix retreat had come alive. We'd only just opened soft enrollment, and already the momentum was building. Word spread faster than I ever anticipated. An old colleague posted about it online after our preview session, and suddenly my inbox was overflowing. Messages from women who'd walked through their own fire, divorces, deaths, betrayals, losses they didn't know how to name. They didn't want pity. They wanted power. And that's what we were building here. I stepped into the main hall where Melissa was testing lighting panels with 2 electricians. The beams above us reached high, forming a vault of warm cedar and natural skylight. The floor wasn't even finished yet, and still the space felt sacred. "How's it feel?" Melissa asked, glancing over her shoulder with that signature grin. "Like breathing after drowning," I said honestly. She clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did this, Danielle. You didn't just survive. You made something that heals." My throat tightened. I wasn't sure when I'd last cried from joy instead of pain, but the edges of it stirred in my chest. Later that day, I walked the grounds with a local journalist who'd reached out after seeing the early buzz online. Her name was Talia, sharp and kind, and as we wandered the garden trails, she kept stopping to jot things in her notebook. "So, you turned your former marital property into a haven for women," she said, eyebrow arched. "That's a headline in itself." I smiled. Technically, the cabin was the only part we shared. The land was mine alone. He just didn't realize how much could grow from it. "What inspired you to create this place?" I looked out toward the lake, the reflection of clouds drifting across the water. "Pain. And then the need for something more than just recovery. I wanted to offer rebirth. For myself, and for anyone else who needed it." She nodded, thoughtful. "You're not just building a space. You're reclaiming the narrative." That line stuck with me long after she left. Reclaiming the narrative. I found Lila near the reflection garden that afternoon, sitting cross-legged with her sketchpad. She looked more at ease than I'd ever seen her, hair tied up in a loose bun, sneakers kicked off in the grass. "Working on something?" I asked, settling next to her. "Just rough ideas," she said. "I was thinking about the mural wall for the community circle. Something that shows movement. Growth." She turned the pad so I could see women rising from waves, their forms abstract and fluid, arms stretched toward the sky. It was breathtaking. "Lila, this is stunning," I said. "You're really talented." She blushed, ducking her head. "Kara would hate it." "Then you know you're on the right track." She laughed, really laughed, and for a moment, she looked younger again, like the weight she carried had finally lifted. I reached over, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You know," I said softly, "you don't have to shrink to make space for other people's comfort. Especially not theirs." Her smile faded, but not from sadness. "I feel more like myself here than I ever have at home." "Then this can be your home, too. As much as you want it to be." She looked at me for a long time. "I want to help. Like, actually help. Not just sketch stuff. Can I intern or whatever?" My heart swelled. "Yes, you can start now." We spent the rest of the afternoon planning the mural project, and when the others joined us, artists, volunteers, friends who had become family, the space filled with that beautiful hum again. That collective heartbeat of women building something bold and unbreakable. Ethan didn't come out of the cabin that day. Maybe he didn't want to see what we were becoming. Or maybe he finally understood it wasn't about him anymore. Either way, I didn't notice his absence. I only saw the fire taking shape. I could hear Kara's voice before I saw her. Sharp, high-pitched, slicing through the afternoon like a blade through silk. "No, absolutely not. This is insane. He needs to do something." I stood at the edge of the wildflower meadow, clipboard in hand, pretending to review the day's schedule while every word hit me as clear as if she were yelling into my ear. I didn't need to turn around. I already knew what was unfolding behind me, another one of her meltdowns, another desperate plea to a man who had finally lost control. Ethan's voice was lower, almost pleading. "What do you want me to do, Kara? I can't unbuild what's already built. You can fight her. She tricked us, she twisted the land deal. You said this cabin was your leverage. My fingers tightened around the edge of the clipboard. Leverage. That's what this had been to him. Not a place. Not a memory. Just a weapon. A contractor passed by, carrying a bundle of cedar planks on her shoulder. She caught my eye and offered a nod of quiet solidarity. I nodded back. That's what this place had become. A net of unspoken support. A web of women lifting each other without fanfare or need for explanation. I turned and walked toward the sound, slowly, unafraid. Kara was pacing on the front porch of the cabin, heels clacking on the wood like they didn't belong. Ethan sat on the steps, hunched forward, phone in one hand, the folder of legal documents I'd given him clutched in the other. Kara spun as she saw me approach. "This is harassment," she hissed. "We can't even sit outside without construction workers walking past." "You're welcome to stay inside," I said evenly. "No one's stopping you." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't play dumb. You're boxing us in. You're doing this to humiliate us." I crossed my arms, standing tall. "No, I'm doing this because it's mine. And because I can. The humiliation is optional. Yours, apparently." Ethan rose then, face tired, the usual edge of confidence dulled. "Danielle, look, we're not trying to start a war." "You already did," I said, voice like steel. "You marched in with a court order and a smirk, expecting me to roll over. But you miscalculated. You thought the cabin was the crown jewel. You never saw the kingdom." Kara scoffed. "You're nothing but petty. Turning this into a circus just to make a point." "No," I said, stepping closer. "I turned this into a sanctuary. You just don't understand the difference." Behind them, the front door creaked open. Lila stood there, arms crossed, watching. She hadn't said a word yet, but her presence shifted the air. Kara noticed it too. "Go inside, Lila," she snapped. "This is none of your business." Lila didn't move. "It's my business if I'm staying here." "Excuse me?" Ethan asked, straightening. Lila looked past him and met my gaze. "Danielle said I could help with the mural. We were supposed to meet after lunch." Kara took a step toward her, voice brittle. "You're not staying here. You're coming with us." "No," Lila said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm not." Ethan's jaw twitched. "Lila, don't push this." But she didn't back down. She stepped fully onto the porch and stood beside me. I saw it then, her mother's backbone, maybe. Or maybe it was something she'd grown herself, watered by years of being dragged into other people's messes. "You said this was about bonding," Lila said. "But you just sit inside fighting. Danielle actually listens to me. She lets me create. She makes me feel visible." Kara's face flushed with fury. "She's manipulating you." "I'm choosing," Lila shot back. "For once, I get to choose." Ethan looked like someone had hit him with a wave he didn't see coming. He turned toward me, but I held his gaze, unblinking. "You wanted access," I said. "You got it. But you don't control what happens outside that door. Not anymore." They had nothing left to say. Kara turned sharply, retreating inside with all the grace of a collapsing pillar. Ethan stood there for a moment longer, the silence between us stretching like an old wound. Then he followed her in, defeated. Lila let out a slow breath beside me. That felt huge. I smiled. That's because it was. We walked back down the path toward the studio, the hum of progress all around us, wood meeting wood, voices raised in laughter, women arriving with open hearts and calloused hands. The land was no longer dormant. It was pulsing with power. Ethan and Kara had come expecting control. But what they found was a woman who'd rewritten the rules, and a girl beginning to understand she could write her own. It happened just as the sun started to dip low across the trees, casting a warm orange glow across the lake and brushing the retreat grounds with that sacred end-of-day stillness. The kind of quiet that made every sound seem louder, more important. The kind of quiet that made truth surface. Lila had spent the whole afternoon painting with the mural team. She wore a smudge of lavender paint across her cheek, a streak of burnt umber down her forearm, and her hair was caught in a messy bun that looked exactly like mine did on work days. I'd seen her slip into herself fully here. She laughed more easily, asked questions, took risks with color and brushstrokes. She belonged. But the moment shattered when Kara stormed out of the cabin like a thundercloud in designer sandals. "Lila," she barked, her voice slicing through the calm like glass underfoot. We all froze. The women around Lila stiffened, brushes hovering midair, unsure whether to step back or stay planted. Lila's shoulders went rigid, but she didn't turn right away. I saw it, her fight with herself, her instinct to obey out of habit clashing with the truth she'd begun to live out here. I said now. Kara's voice cracked. "Your father wants you in the cabin. We're leaving." Lila finally turned, wiping her hands on a rag slowly. "You said we weren't leaving until Sunday." "Well, we're leaving now. Pack your things." Ethan followed behind Kara, slower, hesitant. He wasn't shouting. He didn't have to. Kara was doing all the work, and he was, as always, letting her carry the anger until it exploded. Lila didn't move. "I'm not going back in there," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Kara blinked, thrown off. "Excuse me." Lila took a step closer to me, just enough to make her choice visible. "I'm staying here. With Danielle." It felt like the air shifted. I watched Kara's face crumble into disbelief, then disbelief into fury. "No," she snapped, voice shaking. "You don't get to make decisions like that. You're a child. And she's not your mother." "I know," Lila said, her voice steady now. "But she listens to me. She sees me. And she doesn't use me like a pawn every time you two fight." Ethan stepped forward then, trying to keep his tone even. "Lila, sweetheart, this isn't how you handle things. Come back inside and we'll talk." "I'm done talking to walls," she said. "Every time I tell you how I feel, you shrug it off or say I'm being dramatic. Danielle lets me show up. She lets me work, create. I'm not just the kid you dragged along for bonding points." Kara's face was beet red now. "This is absurd. You think she cares about you? She's just using you to hurt us." That was when I stepped in. "No," I said calmly. "Lila's not a weapon, Kara. She's a person. And she's made a choice." "She's 15. Kara snapped. "She doesn't get to make choices." Lila stepped forward again, voice sharper this time. "Then maybe someone should have made better choices for me. Because I've spent too many weekends sitting in silence while you screamed at each other over nothing. I've seen what a family shouldn't be. And I'm not going back into that cabin. Not tonight. Not ever again like this." The world went still. Ethan looked like someone had hit him square in the chest. Kara looked ready to combust. But Lila? Lila looked like a woman. Like someone who had finally unclenched her fists and found power in her own voice. Kara pointed a trembling finger at me. "This isn't over." "No," I said quietly, "but it's beginning to be." They stood there for another moment, hoping, I think, for someone to give in. But Lila didn't move. She turned back toward the mural wall and picked up her brush. That was it. Kara spun on her heel and marched toward the SUV. Ethan stood for a beat longer, then followed, slower. His eyes lingered on Lila, but he didn't say anything. He'd already lost her. When they were gone, Lila sat on the low stone bench nearby and let out a breath like she'd been holding it for years. "I can't believe I said all that," she whispered. I sat beside her. "I can." She looked at me, something like awe and relief mixing in her eyes. "You think I did the right thing?" "I think you finally did the brave thing." She reached over and gripped my hand, paint and all. "Thanks for letting me stay. Thanks for choosing to." Around us, the retreat glowed with evening light. But this moment, this quiet stand, this final shift, was the brightest thing of all. I stood at the top of the ridge just before dawn, my boots damp with dew and a mug of coffee warming my hands. Below me, the retreat stirred awake. The early crew was already prepping for the day, unloading supplies, checking on the meditation circle, readying the kitchens. The cabins were alive with quiet movement, lights flickering on one by one like soft stars. The Phoenix retreat had a rhythm now, a pulse I could feel through the soles of my feet. It beat in time with mine. When I'd first dared to imagine this place, I never could have pictured the fullness of it. Not just the buildings, but the way it breathed. The way women arrived carrying heavy stories on their backs and left standing taller, eyes brighter. The way Lila had blossomed confident, sure, defiant in all the right ways. The way even I, who thought I'd come here to reclaim peace, had instead found purpose. I sipped my coffee and let the sunrise paint the lake in fire. "Thought I'd find you up here," Marcus said, coming to stand beside me, breath misting in the cool air. "It's tradition now," I said with a small smile. "Sunrise check-in." He glanced out over the land. "Looks like you built something permanent." "No," I said, watching the orange light stretch over the rooftops. "I built something evolving. Something alive." He nodded, then handed me a folded newspaper. "You're on page 2. I took it, eyebrows raised, and unfolded the crisp print. There it was, Phoenix rising. From divorce to empowerment, a woman builds a sanctuary on her own terms, with a photo of me standing between two cabins, paintbrush in hand, Lila just barely visible in the background, smiling. I scanned the article, the words almost surreal. They called me a visionary, a leader, a force. But what struck me most was the truth in their tone. They hadn't painted me as a woman scorned. They painted me as a woman who rose. "I used to think he broke me," I said quietly. "But he just cleared the way." Marcus grinned. "Ethan must be fuming." I shrugged. "Let him. Every woman who walks through that gate is another reminder that I turned pain into power. That's louder than any courtroom win." As if summoned by the thought, I saw Lila emerge from the garden trail, hair wild from sleep, a sketchbook tucked under her arm. She waved, then broke into a jog up the hill toward us. "You're up early," I said as she reached us. "Couldn't sleep," she said breathlessly. "Too many ideas." She opened the book to a new drawing, a design for a small amphitheater by the lake, semicircular, cradled by trees, with space for performances, talks, or quiet storytelling under the stars. "This is stunning," I said, turning the page gently. "I want to help build it," she said. "Not just design it. Like, actually lay the stone." "Can I?" "You can lead it," I told her. "You're ready." Her smile was radiant. Kara and Ethan had tried to pull her away again after their last failed visit, but she hadn't budged. And when they realized she wouldn't come, they left without another word. She hadn't heard from them in 2 weeks. I thought she'd cry. But she just said they were never really listening anyway. Now she was blooming. The retreat was officially opening its doors the next day. The soft launch had become a storm of press and partnerships. Sponsors had signed on, brands focused on healing, sustainability, empowerment. Therapists, artists, speakers from across the country had reached out to offer workshops. There were already applications from women of every background imaginable: mothers, survivors, businesswomen, artists, caretakers, all looking for a place to pause, to rebuild, to rise. That night, we held a gathering by the fire circle. Women sat in warmth and laughter, their voices weaving a new kind of music through the dark. Some cried as they shared stories. Some just listened, their silence finally safe. Lila stood beside me the whole time, one hand resting on the back of the mural wall she helped create. The flames lit her face, and I saw the phoenix there too. After the circle faded and the stars blinked overhead, I sat alone near the embers. Melissa joined me, wine in hand, exhausted but glowing. "Think he knows what he gave you?" she asked. "He gave me ashes," I said. "I made wings." She smiled and leaned back. "You did. And then you gave those wings to others." I looked around, the soft outlines of cabins, the sound of laughter still echoing faintly from the woods, the knowledge that this wasn't the end of something, but the start of everything. Ethan had thought he'd take something from me. Instead, he gave me the spark. And I built a fire that could never be put out.